Christmas Day, 2004, I was working the overnight shift in charge of CNN's international desk. So I come up the escalators into the main CNN newsroom, and it was all almost completely empty. Everybody knows that Christmas Day is one of the quietest days in the news business. And I asked my colleague, is there anything going on in the world? And she said, not really, it's quiet. She said, there is a report of an earthquake off the coast of Sumatra. Otherwise, there's nothing really going on. But then the phone rang, and our New Delhi bureau chief was calling in from Sri Lanka. And he said, I'm getting reports here of coastal areas utterly wiped out. I told him there was a massive earthquake in Indonesia. And as soon as I got that first call from Sat, I realized this is really serious. It had to be a tsunami.
I was a correspondent in the region, and I'd been working really hard, 5 years without a break, really. My family was upset, and to sort of make amends, I said, hey, let's go for a vacation and let's go to Sri Lanka. So we decided to go shopping as a family. And I noticed there's an edginess out in the streets. Something's not right, that's for sure. My phone beeped, and it was from our stringer correspondent in Sri Lanka. And the message was very short: call me, it's urgent. And he says, Satinder, strange things are happening. I'm getting reports from eastern Sri Lanka, the opposite side of the island, that it has been hit by huge waves. I don't know what's going on. I think we need to move.
I was traveling for 6 months before I got to Sri Lanka. doing some yoga, loving it. And I came with a good feeling, good vibration, like new country, new adventures. I went down to the beach. There's the reef and the stones, but the reef was exposed. The sea was far behind. There was shrimps like hopping on the rocks. And there was no fear. Should have been. There should have been. Then there was a shout. The sea's coming, the sea's coming. But it looked like it's coming gently. Suddenly, everybody started running. And then
we had a TV on in the operations room. We hadn't seen any media reports yet, but we were thinking, not good. Yeah. We're doing as much searching as we can do through whatever we can find data-wise, media-wise, anything to try and get a better grip on this. By then, we knew that this ocean-crossing tsunami would probably endanger every country along the Indian Ocean coast. And Sri Lanka was in the worst possible position for the maximum tsunami. It was the largest rupture in history. On the order of 1,200 to 1,300 kilometers long, about the size of the state of California. And because Sri Lanka was perpendicular to the fault line, it was broadsided by the tsunami. Tsunamis will refract. They will bend around the island, putting populations on other sides, far sides of the island in danger. We're talking about tremendous damage, tremendous loss of life. Not just one wave, but multiple waves. And it can often be a subsequent wave that is stronger.
ඉතින් මේ මුළු ස්ටෑන්ඩ් එකම කඩාගෙන යනවා දැන්. කරබර කරලා කඩාගෙන පිටිට යනවා. දැන් හිතාගන්න බෑ. මිනිස්සු ඉතින් ගහගෙන යනවා දැන් කඩදාසි කෑලි ගහන් යනවා වගේ හිතාගන්න බෑ.
අර කොල්ලට මොකක් මල්ලි මට මොනවා හරි වුණොත් ගෙදරට යන්න මම නැතුණා කියලා. කම්ප වෙන්න එපා කියලා. මොකද මම දන්නවනේ මගේ ජීවිතේ නැතුනේ මිනිස්සු බේර ගන්න ගිහලා කියන එක. ඉතින් මගේ ජීවිතේට කනගාටුවක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ මං කොහොමදවත්. ඒ පරතෝ මම දියට පැන්නේ. උඩින් පැන්න මං දියට. මම දැක්ක පුංචි ළමයා කහගෙන යනවා දැක්කම. මං එහෙම දරුවා ගත්තා. මම දරුවගේ බොඩිස් මම දුන්න බොඩි එකට විතමින මසාජ් එක. තියලා මම හෘද බන්ධනේ ටිකක් මම දන්නවා මෙහෙම කරොත් මෙහෙම වෙනවා කියන එක. එනවා කියන එක ඇදිලා. ඒතකොට ළමයා කිඳ ගියා. දෙයනේ කියලා ජීවත් වෙන්න ඕනේ දරුවා. මම දරුවා මුලින් අතර තියලායි මේස උඩ තියලායි මම ආයෙ පොතට පැන්නේ.
I was underwater and I had no air. I remember the feeling of the wave passing on my face and trying to tear up my nostrils and opening my eyelids like immense force. I was being dragged and my legs were being torn.
We're driving right along the coast. And now the crowds have swelled up. There's thousands of people out on the water, close to the beach. And they're all looking at the sea, which is very high, it's very rough. And then I get a call from Paul in the south of Sri Lanka. He's speaking fast and I have to ask him to slow it down. He said, there's water in the train station, there's water in the bus station, there's water everywhere. This is a disaster. All this was happening just miles away from where I was. And I see from my vantage point that the seas certainly come way towards the hotel. I had to keep my family safe, and I said it's time to go up.
It was a very crowded train. My mother and I were traveling to my aunt and uncle's farm, which is the home where my mother grew up. We were standing shoulder to shoulder with other people. I'm one of 3 siblings, so it's always nice to get some time alone with your mother, but also for me, it was wonderful to see her in her natural environment. We moved to America in the late 80s. In America, people will often ask you where you're from. So I've kind of developed this answer of Chicago is home and then Sri Lanka is home. So just what most immigrants do of straddling their two worlds. The train stopped. And the first moments that we really felt that something was amiss was when the water level from far out just started getting closer to us, water, and it actually entered our train. And it slowly kind of crept up your body, ankles, knees, thighs, waist. And then the water slowly then receded. I went out to take a couple pictures. The car in front of us had tipped over to its side. My mother and I debated if we should try to go out and just swim somewhere, but looking out from the train car window, there was no dry land to be seen.
මම දුම්රිය ඉස්සරහට ගියා. නැගලා ගියා ඉස්සරහට ගියා පයින්. දෙවනි වතුර පාර මේ එනෝ දැක්කේ. මේකේ අර මැද හරිය තංගුණ කළු පාට පස් මේ කළු පාටත් උඩට පෙන මේකත් එක්ක තමයි මේක ආවේ නිකන් අර මකරි වෙන්න පීනන්න වගේ තමයි ආයේ රළපා. තරම් උසින් අර වගේ මේ දර්ශනයකුත් එක්ක. හිත කියනවා මේ වතුර පාර ආවනේ පොට්ටි පිටි වහලා මේ පොට්ටි පිටි පෙරලයි. මම දෙවනි පන්තියේ මැදට නැගලා මූද පැත්තට වෙච්ච ජනලේ ඇරලා දග්ගා ලොක් කරගත්තා.
We could hear screaming start. And again, the water started at our feet, rose to our knees, waist, chest. And I think it was at that point that I realized this is different than the first one. This is not going to just ebb and go down. And then our train car tipped over. We're all falling on top of each other, but submerged underwater. So I kicked, very likely could have kicked my mother. And this window that was looking out over the ocean was now on top. Then, mercifully, it was open and I'm small enough that I could pull myself up and out. I was alive, and there's a chance now I can get my mother and we could be okay. Then we started pulling whatever hands were reaching out from that window. And I just thought we would eventually get to her. And at some point, then the water levels receded. I found my mother fairly quickly. So I tried pushing on her abdomen and trying to revive her. And it seemed hopeful because there was water coming out of her mouth. And then, shortly after, the water turned to blood. I just didn't want to hurt her anymore, make her bleed. So I stopped. I took her wedding ring and kissed her, and I told my Ami that I'll be back for her. And then we left. We left her on the train. And we went into the waters to try to find some land to be safe.
The higher we were, the safer I felt for my family. And And the first thing, I go up to the balcony, I look out. There's a small road in front of the hotel. The sea has crossed the road. There's a pool nearby. I see the sea thunder into that pool. And the adrenaline that I normally have as a correspondent is now replaced by fear. I called Eli at CNN's Atlanta headquarters.
SAC called in, and I realized we needed to understand the true scale of this tsunami. We're supposed to be able to tell people what's going on in a situation literally of life and death. And there are only 3 of us in Atlanta on the international desk. And it was incredibly difficult to get accurate information. We're contacting people on the ground. We're trying to talk to government officials. Everything told us that Sri Lanka was the center of the story.
Music. 56, music. We're back.
So I put Satinder through to the control room.
Sound and A. Stand by B. Track and B is next.
It felt surreal. Here I am on break. CNN is in full breaking news mode. That's a big moment. And I gave the first eyewitness report to the world, live from the 6th floor hotel balcony.
We're joined on the line from Colombo by our correspondent, Satinder Bindra. Satinder.
Shihab, I'm standing right next to the coastline here in Colombo. The seas moved in very, very quickly and quickly sucked everything out. Residents here obviously very concerned because no one is quite...
At this point, I know this is a big story. And the world had to know what was happening. I pick up the phone and call my bureau in Delhi. And I tell the assignment editor there, pull everybody off their break. We need a full crew, we need a cameraman. We've got to get a live presence on this story.
That perhaps more than 100 people there are feared dead. The officials too are very concerned. They are monitoring coastal areas and telling people that they should leave their homes and move back. We are receiving information.
First thing in the morning, my neighbor knocked hard on the door, came in, asked me to turn on the TV. So I did what he said. I saw the wave. I saw a big wave. And I panicked. Because I knew the wave took my daughter. I knew it. She was traveling around Sri Lanka. And I'm a single mother. So I cannot lose her. She was all my world. I only wanted to hear her voice. Only to hear her voice.
මගේ එකම අරමුණ වෙලා තිබුණේ මගේ ගර්ල්ෆ්‍රෙන්ඩ් සොයාගන්න එක. ගාලු පාරේ වතුර මගේ ඉන මට්ටමට තිබුණා පිරීලා වතුර. මලකදම්ම හැමතැනම දැක්කත් මට විශ්වාසයක් තිබුණා මගේ පෙම්වතියත් පණපිටින් මට ලැබෙයි කියලා. ගර්ල්පෙන් අදිනවා නිල් පාට ටීසට් එකකුයි ඩෙනිමකුයි. මට හිතුණා ගහක් උඩ ගෑනු ළමෙක් ඉන්නවා දැක්කා අර ඩෙනිමයි ටීසට් එකයි. මම දැක්කා ළඟටම යද්දි මෙයා කියලා මට හිරවෙලා හිටියේ මුණින් අතට. ඔහොම ගහේ දෙබලක් අස්සේ තමා මෙහාවම මුණින් අතට හිරවෙලා හිටියේ. කියන්නේ මූණ පැත්ත පල්ලෙහාට ඉතින් ඔහොම අත් දෙකයි ඔක්කොම මලමිනියක් වැදිලා තියෙන විදියම තමා තිබුණේ. ලස්සන ගෑනු ළමෙක්. තමන් ලියුම් දෙනවා. මෙයා ලියුම් ගන්නවා හැබැයි දුන්නට මෙයා ඒ ගෙනිල්ලා ලියුම් මෙට්ටේ යට තමා හංගන්නේ. කැබ් එක ඇවිල්ලා එකපාරටම මගේ ගාව නැවතුණා. මං එයාව දැම්මා මලමිනී උඩටම මලමිනී තිබුණු කැබ් එකේ. ඒ උඩටම දාලා මමත් ඒකම කොට වෙලා කරාපිටි රෝහල විත රැගෙන ගියා.
They came like river water. They came and came and came. Myself and my wife, both of us were intern medical officers. And we just had our baby daughter. She was 5 months old at that time. I was trying to resuscitate a child. I thought if somebody more capable and more senior could give a hand to me. And there was another doctor who was trying to resuscitate another patient, and I called for him. But he could not come. The nurses didn't know what to do. But they stood there. They stood there and they tried their best. When I saw these children, it's, flashed into my mind about my daughter. And I didn't want to give up. When you feel that you could save one life, it's like gold.
දැන හිටපු සිවිල් ඇසියන් ඇවිල්ලා ඒ කට්ටිය ගත්තා. අරගෙන දෙන්න තුන කහුව වෙලා මෙයාව ටොලියකින් තියලා මට ටොලිය අල්ල ගන්නවත් වෙලාවක් නැහැ. මාත් පස්සෙන් දිව්වා පමණයි. දොස්තරවරු සහ නර්ස්ලා ගොඩ දෙනෙක් වට වෙලා එතන පෙලක් අය බඩ මිරිකලා මෙයාගේ කටින් ඇත්තටම වතුර යනවා මම දැක්කා. නර්ස්ලා ඩොක්ටර්ස්ලා එතනින් පොඩ්ඩක් ඈත් වෙලා හිටියා. මම ළඟට වෙලා මං ඔළු අතක ගා හිටියේ. එතකොට මට ගොඩාක් දුකටපත් වුණා. ටික වෙලාවක් තප්පර ගානක් යනකොට ඇස් දෙක ඇරලා
පෙන්වතන් ළඟ හිටියා. මට කෑ ගහලා ඇඬුණා. හිතාගන්න බෑ මොකද එයාත් බේරුණානේ කියලා මාර සතුටක් ඇතුණා.
මට ගොඩක් ආදරේ හිතුණා. එයා මාව බදාගන්නකොට මොකද අපි දෙන්න ආදරේ කරන්න පටන්ගත්තු මුල් අවදිය.
එයා මාව බේරගත්තා කියලා දැනගත්තට පස්සේ එයාවම තමා මට බඳින්න ඕනි කියලා හිතුණා. දැන් මට පුතාලා දෙන්නෙක්නේ ඇත්තටම සතුටුයි. සතුටින් සාමදානෙන් ඇත්තටම ඉන්නවා.
I take the van that I had hired for my family. I drive down the coast towards Gaul. And the force of what happened that morning hits me. It destroyed everything. And what I'm seeing is just the tip of the iceberg. I go into a fishing community, and the seas rushed onto the land. And I look up about a kilometer down the coast. The roads were destroyed, gone. There was no way you could get from Colombo to Gaul by road. All communications were down. And I made the decision that we must try to get a helicopter into Gaul.
We were realizing that roads and bridges were gone, telephone lines were knocked down. And we went for the first several hours thinking that Sri Lanka was the epicenter of the story. But then there was a massive volume of information that was now flooding in from so many sources. We started to hear reports from India, from Malaysia, from Maldives, and from Thailand. And we were calling everyone in the field. Everyone in the field was calling in to us. And we sent everybody to every location that we could think of. We just had no context for understanding a tsunami of that size and that magnitude. Nothing like this had ever happened in any of our lifetimes.
I don't remember standing up. I was broken and I had this deep wound in my leg. Everything was chaos, chaos. The local villagers started to gather up everybody that was still alive. And they're starting to evacuate us to the hospitals. I felt really alone. And I saw a guy with a cellular phone. And I asked him if I could use the phone. And he said that he would give it to me pleasure, but there's no lines, like physically the poles went down, there's no communication. And I said, let me try. So he handed the phone to me. And she answered. And I go like, Mommy, I'm fine.
She was alive. I lost it. I just lost it. I was screaming. I see myself. I was screaming so.
And I think the conversation lasted like 2 seconds, but I was still holding the phone and talking.
I got her back. I got myself back. I got life back.
We managed to get a helicopter from Colombo. And then you start coming in towards Gaul, and then you can see from the air. Everything along the coast had been just blown away. And I remember being told about the train. Minutes after the train left, the last station, that train station had information that the train was heading straight into the tsunami. But there was no cell phone on the train, and that message couldn't be delivered.
There were local people that were ferrying people away from the train. I was just numb with shock and grief. I have made it back to my aunt and uncle. I just hugged them. They just held me. So that's when I was safe and home.
What are you doing?
There's some beauty of saying goodbye to my mother when she was so vital and alive. You know, she was 55 and young and healthy and beautiful. And I think I finally understand now, being a mother. If you get a choice, you always want your children to survive. We had electricity so we could watch the news.
Hundreds died when a train flipped over on its side, and then waves just carried it out towards the sea. Entire rail tracks were ripped out.
I realized then how few people survived that train. Those odds have brought guilt, joy, understanding the randomness, God's plan, however you want to call it. Watching the news over the next few days made me realize how lucky I was alive.
We're interrupting your regular programming to bring you some breaking news from ABC News. The most powerful earthquake in 40 years
triggered giant waves or tsunamis that
hit without warning at the peak of the holiday season.
Many of the victims lived outside the range of the International Tsunami Warning System. Barry Peterson has the latest on a disaster whose full dimensions are yet to be known.
I remember hearing how these trains in Sri Lanka had been knocked off their rails. That was just mind-blowing, you know. I called my wife. She started to cry, and I remember crying as well. So it was tough. That was a big moment.
As it dawned on us that Sri Lanka had been devastated,
we were thinking, what more can we do? What can we do? And then the phone rang, I picked it up, and it was the U.S. State Department. I explained to them, this is an ocean-wide danger. You've got relationships and contact points and all the things we need to warn the coasts. We could see that the next large population that was in danger was the east coast of Africa. I said, please get the message out to the coastal populations. Kenya got the word ahead of the wave, and they did evacuate. We felt like at least we did something. At least hopefully we saved somebody.
Millions of people were waking up to news of an incredible tragedy. But quickly, incredible stories of survival started to emerge. And our coverage shifted to the rescue effort and the desperate search of families clinging on to the hope that their loved one survived.